Week 2 of the NFL season is done, and we are on to Week 3 of our power rankings. And I will be honest, I know probably less than I did last week. It has just become muddied and a mess, but let's still get into it. But before we do get into it, I wanted to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Thursday and Saturday all year long. Now, let's get back to the video. Starting off, as always, our bottom 12, and it is very similar to previous weeks. Some of the big movers here are the Raiders, moving up to number 23 thanks to their win against the Ravens. I did say that they had a chance in that game in my weekly pick'ems. I did not pick them to win, but the Raiders definitely felt like they had a better chance than Vegas was giving them to me, which is why I didn't move them up too much. I still think the team has some rough spots. And then some big droppers in here, the Bears, the Jaguars, and the Colts, all of whom had some pretty bad losses and are really making me question how good these teams are. The biggest one to me that's a disappointment is the Colts, as I really did think coming into the season the Colts would win the AFC South. But with an 0-2 start compared to a Texans 2-0 start, I might need to eat my crow on that one. Next up, we have our 11 to 20, and a few significant movers here. We have the Rams dropping a fair bit, primarily because the Cardinals, destroyed them, but also because they just have so many injuries. It's tough to rank them any higher. I think a fully healthy Rams team is definitely higher than 19th, but this ain't a fully healthy Rams team, and we don't know when they will be a fully healthy team. Other droppers are teams like the Dolphins and Cowboys, both dropping out of the top 10 thanks to some pretty big losses in the week. And you have the Vikings and Saints both rising, who had some wins that not many people expected. If these teams continue to play like they are, because both look very good, they will be entering the top 10. The only reason they're not there yet is because these teams entering the season had significant issues and questions, and we still need a little bit of time before we determine if those issues were warranted or if the teams have fully overcome them and we were just overstating them in the offseason. Now we'll get into our top 10, and we'll start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, moving up from number 13 with a 2-0 start to their season. They got revenge for their loss in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs in 2023, this time by beating the Detroit Lions 20-16. I don't know if the Buccaneers looked that good. Their running attack did nothing against the Lions. Outside of Chris Godwin, their passing attack didn't look that great. Their offensive line allowed Aiden Hutchinson to get 4.5 sacks in that game. But their defense held up and managed to hold the Lions to only 16 points. It does beg the question, is a depleted Buccaneers secondary still really good? Or are the Lions just struggling offensively? Or was it just a one-game blip? I don't totally know, but the Buccaneers have done enough in the first 2 weeks, including beating one of the top teams in the NFL in Detroit while being in Detroit. All that makes it so the Bucs move into our top 10 at number 10. At number 9, we have the 0-2 Baltimore Ravens dropping from number 5 on our list. The Ravens are the only 0-2 team still holding on to a top 10 seed, primarily because their first loss was very close to the Chiefs. And I still trust this team and the talent on it to be better than what we saw where they lost to the Raiders. I know many people might put the Ravens lower than the top 10 because they did lose to the Raiders, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. The Raiders are a team that can sometimes win some pretty shocking games against some pretty good teams. I believe they beat the Chiefs last year, and the Chiefs won their second straight Super Bowl last year, so that's just what the Raiders do. But the Ravens are definitely going to need to figure things out, especially on the offensive line, if they are going to be able to compete in the AFC North and the AFC in general. Yes, they are benefited by the fact that the Bengals are also 0-2, and I definitely think the Ravens can overcome the Browns and the Steelers, who are 1-1 and 2-0 respectively. So the Ravens aren't out of it, but they definitely need to get some stuff going, especially seeing as they have a very difficult schedule both in the short term and throughout the remainder of the season, so they don't have the easiest time getting a really good record to be good enough to have a home game in the playoffs in the AFC. At number 8, we have the Ravens' divisional rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 2-0, moving up from number 11. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that I don't have a ton of faith in, but let's look at the facts. They are 2-0 with a backup quarterback, and their defense is arguably the best in the NFL. TJ Watt has been a man possessed. The rest of the defense is holding every team they've played thus far to basically nothing on the ground or in the air. The Steelers always seem to be able to do this, And I really do think that when Russell Wilson comes back, he is an upgrade over Justin Fields. I know some people might disagree with that, but I do think he is a better passer. He'll make George Pickens a better receiver. He'll allow more to open up in the run game for Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. And if this offense can get going and be coupled with how good the defenses look, the Steelers actually could kind of be a pretty scary team. And I'm starting to buy in a little bit on them, which is why I'm moving them into the top 10 at number 8. At number 7, we have the Philadelphia Eagles falling one spot from number 6 thanks to a Monday night collapse against the Atlanta Falcons. It's tough to put the Eagles too far down given that loss, especially given the fact that if Saquon Barkley literally just catches a ball, the Eagles win that game and are probably 3rd or 4th on this list. And so I didn't want to knock them too much because drops happen, and yeah, they should have beat the Falcons by more than they did, but that sometimes happens in the NFL. All told, I still think the Philadelphia Eagles look decent, though not as good as I thought they looked in week 1 when they played against the Green Bay Packers. The offense, especially the run game, looked pretty good for the most part, but the passing game without A.J. Brown definitely looked to be a little bit slower. Yeah, Devontae Smith did get a touchdown, but outside of that, the receivers that were catching the ball really weren't guys you'd ever expect. Jahan Dotson, you thought would have been the wide receiver too. No, he's like the 5th option still, even without A.J. Brown. So if you have him in fantasy, I mean, get rid of him. He is not worth it at all. All told, though, I think the biggest question about the Eagles is their defense. Bijan Robinson was able to get big gain after big gain after big game. Yeah, he didn't have any like 30, 40-yard runs, but he was getting 7 yards pretty consistently on this Eagles defense. And while their passing defense was good for the majority of the game, that final drive from the Falcons where they literally carved through the entirety of the Eagles defense in a minute with no timeouts when the Eagles did not want them to score, given they were up by 6, just shows you that this secondary for the Eagles is still not a great unit and definitely still the weakness of this organization in 2024. At number 6, we have the Green Bay Packers moving back to 6 with week 2 being at 10 and week 1 also being at 6. The Packers looked pretty good against the Indianapolis Colts, at least for the fact that they had Malik Willis starting at QB, but they were able to run all over the Colts. They were able to control that game, and Malik Willis didn't look terrible. And as well, we have good news that Jordan Love nearly apparently played on Sunday, which means he might be back earlier than we thought. And with what this team looks like overall, and if Jordan Love is back anytime soon, the Packers absolutely belong to be one of the best teams in the NFL. And I think 6 is reasonable for them, especially if Jordan Love is coming back sooner than we all expected. And at number 5, we have the Packers' divisional rival, the Detroit Lions, falling 2 spots after a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I didn't want to drop the Lions too far because they did lose to a Buccaneers team that is now 2-0, that did win the division last year and win a playoff game, that I do now have ranked in the top 10. So it's not the worst loss in history for the Lions, and teams tend to lose some of these games. But I definitely have an alert on the Lions because they barely beat a depleted Rams team that was depleted throughout the game, admittedly, but they still barely beat them when they were depleted. And then they lose to a depleted secondary in the Buccaneers when they only put up 16 points. Jared Goff has not looked like the Jared Goff we've seen for the past 2 seasons. He looks much more similar to the Jared Goff we saw during the end of his Rams tenure in the first year he was in Detroit. I hope as a Lions fan that this is just a blip and that Goff and the Lions and Ben Johnson can figure everything out and get back to the team we all know they can be. But I definitely have some concerns about this Lions team based on what I've seen for the last 2 weeks, even if Jameson Williams kind of looks like a stud all of a sudden. At number 4, we have the San Francisco 49ers dropping 2 spots after a loss to the Minnesota Vikings. The second straight year the 49ers took an L at the hand of the Vikings when nobody expected that to happen. Sam Darnold was basically able to carve through this San Francisco 49ers defense, which who had that happening in 2024? I think you could make an argument for the 49ers being dropped further down this list, especially seeing as the team they lost to was the Vikings, but the 49ers still have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. They are still missing Christian McCaffrey, and that's not going to change anytime soon. and Deebo Samuel might be out for an extended period of time. So there definitely is a world where this team starts to fall, and we're going to see how good Brock Purdy is as a quarterback now that two of his main four weapons are going to be out for at least a week, if not more. Again, it's tough to drop this team any further than number 4 just based off the talent alone this team has. And so I'm still leaving them as a top 5 team. I don't think dropping them any further than this really makes much sense. But another team that I definitely have a little bit of a watch out for, and this is just the theme of this week in the NFL. There are very few teams that I am truly confident in the NFL. Literally everybody who's 4th or later, I'm not sold on as an NFL team. Only the top 3 have I sat there and said, no, they've been good for 2 straight weeks, and we thought they'd be good coming into the season. There are 3 teams. 3 teams we've said preseason, good. Week 1, good. Week 2, good. And so the 49ers are the best of the rest, which is what puts them here at number 4. At number 3, we have the Houston Texans rising from number 7 thanks to a Sunday Night Football win against the Chicago Bears. Now, that win wasn't that impressive. I actually picked the Texans to be my lock of the week against the Bears, especially with what I saw from the Bears in week 1, and it didn't look much different in week 2. But even still, the Texans still took care of business. CJ Stroud and Nico Collins did their thing. They did everything you needed and expected them to do in a Sunday Night Football victory. And a week after, they had a very good win against the Colts. Yes, both of these games might have been a little bit close, especially seeing as I have both the Colts and the Bears ranked fairly low on this power ranking. But the Texans still took care of business, which is more than I can say for almost any other team in the NFL at this point in the season, which is crazy to say only 2 weeks into the season, but it is what it is. And so just because the Texans are one of the 3 teams who looked good at the beginning of the season, looked good after week 1, and looked good after week 2, they get number 3. It's just that simple. And at number 2, moving up from number 4 last week, we have the Buffalo Bills, who everybody thought was going to be rebuilding coming into this year. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. I didn't think so, and I know many of Buffalo Bills fans didn't think they were going to be rebuilding. But I know a lot of people who were having the Bills miss the playoffs, finish 3rd in their division behind the Dolphins and the Jets. And 2 weeks into the season, all that conversation is gone. I'm pretty sure everybody knows the Buffalo Bills are every bit as elite as they were historically, and they are every bit the AFC East powerhouse who should win the division as they have been basically since the Josh Allen era started, or at least the elite Josh Allen era started, I should say more correctly. The Bills took care of business against the Miami Dolphins, and some people might come out here and say, oh, well, the Bills only beat the Dolphins because they lost Tua. And to that, I would say, did you watch the game? I think the Bills were up something like 31-7. I don't remember the exact score, but it was an insane lead the Bills had when Tua went out of the game. The Bills beat the Dolphins with Tua and then just didn't score after Tua left the game because they didn't need to. And even though Josh Allen didn't put up the greatest stat line in history, it's because he didn't need to. James Cook in the running game did everything the Bills needed, and so Josh Allen was just able to be a game manager. And I'll tell you right now, Joe Brady, Sean McDermott, and the Buffalo Bills would love if that is the Josh Allen stat line that you see every week of the season. That is basically every offensive coordinator and head coach's goal in an NFL game. Your running game just does everything for you, and your quarterback just does enough and stands there and looks pretty and gets the dub. I also think the Bills in their outlook was buoyed by the fact that the Arizona Cardinals looked dominant in week 2. And so maybe it really was that the Cardinals are just a really good team and the Bills beat a really good team in the Cardinals in a close game in week 1. I don't know what the answer is, but what I do know is the Bills truly do deserve to be here at number 2. And at number 1, again, this is not changing until they lose. And even if they lose, I don't know if this is changing. It's your 2-time defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. What else can you say? You can argue that a pass interference call is the only reason they beat the Bengals, and maybe you're right. But they still beat the Bengals. They were still in that game. They're still the Kansas City Chiefs. I apologize that I don't sound that excited about this, but it's just so boring and repetitive. The Chiefs just feel like they're going to be here all year. I basically have this locked in pen, locked in, permanent marker at this point at number 1 on this list, and that's just where they are again. And that's it for our power rankings, but the video is not done because, as always, we also make our Thursday night prediction in this video, as our weekly predictions will not come out until Saturday after the Thursday nighter has already happened. And so this week we have a second straight all AFC East matchup. Last week we had the Bills visiting the Dolphins. This week we have the Patriots visiting the Jets. And I think we can all agree last week's was a little bit more exciting, at least on paper. Both the Patriots and the Jets are two teams that define themselves based on their defenses. I don't think this is going to be a very high-scoring game, but I'm going to give the slight edge to the Jets. I just think Aaron Rodgers is good enough to score enough points on the Patriots to win this game. And it does feel like a game that the Jets will actually maybe get up for, especially their defense, who has been hit or miss for the past year plus. I'm one of the few people who says that. Everyone still remembers the Jets defense of 2022 and thinks that's who they are. I mean, I don't think they're that good anymore, but they're still good. They can still compete and stop a Patriots team that's not great offensively, and Aaron Rodgers can do enough to bring this win for the Jets at MetLife Stadium, but I don't think it's going to be a great game. But that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, a reminder to leave a like and comment down below. Help us out, help us grow. Either way, I'll see you all next time. Peace!